safety issues. Those are the 4 main topics that will be discussed by the panel that I will soon introduce to you. Welcome back. Today's panel is composed of Dr. Emmanuel Okobenin, who is the Director for Program Development and Commercialization at AATF. In his role, Emmanuel identifies opportunities for agricultural technologies interventions, assess the feasibility and probability of success of project concepts, identifies sources of appropriate technologies, negotiate their access and deployment, and provides leadership in the implementation of AATF projects portfolio. You are welcome, Dr. Emmanuel.
Thank you, moderator, Dr. Canisius Kanajiri. It's a pleasure to make the first presentation at this webinar. And I'm trying to open my presentation. Let me know if it's...
Before you go to the presentation, let me also introduce to the participants other panelists. So you can keep your presentation title on. The second panelists will be Mrs. Opeolua Fayomi, the co-founder of Plethora Agro-Allied Global Limited. The organization specializes in large-scale poultry and greenhouse vegetable production. She takes lead in facilitating agribusiness, finance linkages and empowerment, mentorship and capacity building for smallholder farmers and agripreneurs in Nigeria on good agricultural practices and post-harvesting loss management. Welcome, Ope. Allow me to use Ope.
Thank you very much, Dr. Canisius. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The third panel member will be Dr. Gabriel Rugalema. He is the regional director for Eastern Southern Africa at the World Vegetal Center. As a regional director for this organization, Dr. Rugalema works with partners, develops new projects, and extends research, development, and capacity building work of World Vegetable Center through networks to benefit farmers and consumers along the region's vegetable value chain. Daktari, karibu. And last but not least, we will have Dr. Bisi. And Dr. Komla Bisi, who is an advisor at the African Union Commission on the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, Pillar 2, CADIP Pillar 2. He is also responsible for trade and market access development at the African Continental Free Trade Area, Secretariat. You are welcome, Dr. BC. Now, let me thank you very much, panel members, to have created this time and come to discuss these very important topics with different participants that we have, who will certainly be interested in what you will share, but also who will be interested in discussing with you after your respective presentations. Thank you for coming. Before I allow my colleagues to start presentations, let me first of all share with you the very basic ground rules. First of all, each presenter will have 15 minutes for the presentation. And I will request you to remain in those 15 minutes and permit me to alert you 3 minutes to the end of your time so that you can be strictly in the 15 minutes and allow participants to ask questions. Secondly, I want to request that participants and panelists, you give me just a minute after two presentations, after each two presentations, to allow you provide us feedback on a poll question which will be given to you. There will be a poll questions after two presentations. And third rule is that I will request our participants to put in the chat box your questions and comments so that at the end of the full presentation, we can pick them from there and ask the presenters to answer and provide you clarification that you will request from them. So those are the rules. Now, after that, it is my great pleasure to start the series of presentations. I will start by inviting Dr. Emmanuel Okobenin to share with us post-harvest management challenges in the agricultural value chains and the role of agricultural technologies in addressing those challenges. Emmanuel, the floor is yours. You are welcome. Welcome, Emmanuel. I can see that you are muted.
Yeah, thanks. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I have to put in presentation mode. Yeah. Thank you again, moderator, Dr. Canisius Kananjure, Executive Director of AATF. So I'm kickstarting the presentation by looking at the post-harvest management challenges in value chains and the role of agricultural technology in stemming those challenges. So my title reads again, the post-harvest management challenges in agricultural value chains and the role of agricultural technology. I'll just give a brief introduction and then the critical PHL, which is post-harvest losses challenges, the post-harvest management evolution and development, then prospects of employing innovative post-harvest management technologies. And I will be rounding up with a conclusion. Basically, you look at the map on the right, and again, these are the red parts there is just an information on areas that face acute food insecurity. And they are labeled as hotspots. And also, basically, you find countries that have one challenge is either population explosion or poor climatic conditions and also poor infrastructures, etc., and so on. And so that tells you again that those hotspots will be areas where you want to pay special attention to, critically, because food insecurity, it's a big problem in those hotspots. However, I want to mention that the post-harvest management is part of the issues SDG goals, or what they call it, SDG. One of the key things SDG is trying to address, and it's point 12.3, and also the African Union Agenda 2063 is also addressing post-harvest management losses. And you also need to understand that your agricultural transformation requires that your value chains are effectively functional and that your productivity base is also doing very well. All right, but it doesn't make sense when your productivity base is doing well and the losses you incur is staggering. And so it negates the need to boost food productivity worldwide, and especially in Africa, where the population rate of increase is quite very high. So we are saying right now that globally, based on data from the World Bank and FAO, about 8.9% of people are hungry. And then in that situation, you are still losing 33% of food, again, which doesn't make sense. But that is because certain things that are supposed to go with productivity are not in place. So with that brief comment, the goals are basically to reduce food loss and enhance food security by addressing post-harvest management. And of course, value chains will deal with livestock like meat, and the food productivity base generally includes cereals, fruits which are highly perishable, vegetables that are highly perishable, starchy roots and tubers that are also in that same frame because they go into deterioration. So the data basically shows that fruits, vegetables, roots and tubers are the biggest places where we have post-harvest management losses, or post-harvest losses, if you want to call it. And of course, yeah, because your management determines the kind of losses you suffer. So for some crops, because of their genetics, they lose more than others. So that's what we are saying with mangoes. It's 20 to 50% in Ghana, and in Ghana, and 39 to 52% in Kenya, which is very high. So, and most of the fruits and vegetables also do have implications. Why? They provide a lot of micronutrients, and micronutrients are very key to good nutrition. And we have a lot of problems related to malnutrition. So when you lose so much of money, then it means that you have problems related to nutrition and basically health. And that has to be addressed if we must bring Africa on good health picture. So the critical post-harvest challenges in Africa. Well, PHL, which is post-harvest losses, is a measurable trait, and it can be measurable from the quantitative components or from the qualitative components. And of course, like I said before, 8.9% of people are hungry, and FAO has shown that 30% of food produced for human consumption is lost or wasted along the supply chain, which is very, very bad. And even in Africa, this could even be higher, between 30 and 50%. And when you consider that against disasters that will normally happen, like droughts that comes to destroy crops on the field, floods and storms, it's not any better anywhere also because it's high, but you discover that a lot of food is being lost, and they can happen at various stages in the chain, either through distribution, in the distribution phase, consumption phase, processing and packaging, at post-harvest and at harvest levels. And you can see the figures, they are quite very high. Basically, a lot is lost at harvest, a lot is lost at post-harvest, and then you have other components. And if you look at the map below, you see the movement of trades. but it's not really resonating in Africa, because if you suffer post-harvest losses and infection, your through regulatory controls, your products can get into the trade and into markets, which means that your transformation process to empower your farmers, give them better income, better livelihoods will not be supported. And Africa is at the middle of those big challenges. And so if we must successfully protect productivity, we must address post-harvest losses in Africa. And that's what I'm saying here. And we must look at how to control issues along the chains. And post-harvest losses, if you look at it, do occur through three processes. A qualitative loss, which has to do with spoilage and spillage of crops involving microbial attack as well and pest attack. We have quantitative loss, which can also happen and in the supply chain. And then you have food that, not because they were bad, but somehow they get to the consumption levels, they go through the chains, but again, they are not consumed. So a lot of factors are happening in that process. So they all contribute to lead to what you call post-harvest loss. And so we must address those three components, including the earlier one I mentioned about disaster. And what is post-harvest management basically? It's about controlling the environment, that handles the crops you produce. And that could be as simple as managing your temperature and handling your produce very well, and then doing proper packing. It can be as simple as that. But failure to do that will mean that you lose so much. Of course, there are many other things we could do. We have varieties, but they are not well suited for processing. And therefore, you lose them. Inappropriate processing technologies are also problems. Inadequate commercialization, there are technologies, but again, farmers can't afford them or they can't even access them. And that could be a problem. Then, of course, lack of basic infrastructure like transportation issues in Africa. Most production happen in the rural area that are not well connected by roads. And if you don't have good infrastructure, those things are bound to be damaged or to suffer losses. Then facilities like silos, they are very critical, and insufficient promotion of processed products. Most of the foods we sell in the market still are in the raw state and they are not processed. So a lot of constraints are driving that processes. However, the issue, unfortunately, is that most post-harvest techniques used in Africa are still based on traditional practice. And that has a lot of reasons, which I cannot discuss here. Of course, when you try to drive a subsistence agriculture, farmers would not like to invest because they just use the food to supplement what they eat. But again, there are many things, but if we have...
Emmanuel, may I ask you to put on your video?
Oh, it has gone? Sorry. Yeah, so my apologies for that. So if most farmers could not get simple post-harvest management technologies, then it will be difficult for them to even apply. And so many reasons are responsible for why they still use traditional practice. However, what are the traditional elements of post-harvest management? You discover that they still use communal storage structures made of real raw materials from the forest and used basically for cereal banks. You can see what I have in the right pictures, and they just use natural elements. And of course, with drought, with destruction of the forest, most of these things are now not really accessible. The other thing is that natural materials used for construction are basically, as I mentioned before, are also used for grain stores as well. They're all natural materials. And then the quality of storage sometimes under those conditions can really diminish. Some do really meet up to the needs, but again, it's not well conditioned to support kind of modern best practices for commercial agriculture. Like, for example, the quantity you harvest might just be beyond what the capacity of the producers can deal with their traditional structures. Again, some of them are not well suited for pathological or pest challenges. And so some of these things are these are some of the things you have. And also most of these natural materials are not really accessible all over the places. So, but they have used them quite fairly well. But when you come into commercial agriculture, where you're looking at business, you don't want to use what is not very optimal. and you want to use something that is quite durable, you want to get value for money. And so those are some of the challenges. So as the world is trying to deal with the challenges of food security and nutrition security, it's obvious that the best way to go is to start to move away from subsistence agriculture to commercial agriculture, which means you move from subsistence economy to market economy. Of course, a lot of technologies, modern technologies have evolved over time. We have solar systems there that are being used to support drying. A lot of silos are coming up right now. Sometimes they use tarpaulin, you use cold stores, all kind of possibility, silos, plastics, metal, they're all there. And I think over time, there has been good efforts to see that post-harvest technologies are such that can be transferred to farmers, even if you're a smallholder farmer. So, well, can move. Okay, so a lot of things have to be considered. Now, what will you consider as your PHM technology, post-harvest management technology? And why would you want to consider one? One of the few things is that some of the produce you have are really active, that they are alive. You have to look at their respiration rate and manage them. At certain critical positions, they produce ethylene, and the ethylene production is also very directly related to your shelf life. Rates of compositional changes, color, texture, flavor, all those things are some of the things that determine the value of your products in the market. Mechanical injuries can also be critical if you don't handle very well water stress, physiological and pathological. These are things that your post-harvest management technology must address. And what are other criteria that could be important? You want to effectively reduce loss. If you are talking of commercial agriculture, you want to see how cost-effective your technology is, how easy is it to use. It should not be too complicated. It must be able to produce increased income for you, and it must be scalable too, because what is not scalable cannot get to farmers. Unfortunately, investment is very low in post-harvest management. We've done a lot in production, but you want to also correspondingly put funds into research that will help you safeguard what you produce on the farm. So if with that consideration, it means that we still have a lot to do in making sure post-harvest management science improves a lot. However, I have tried to cluster the approaches you can adopt to address post-harvest management. I put it biological, and then under the biological, you are looking at genetic issues, biorationals. Then you look at chemical, you look at mechanical, which is like a processing and engineering of processing. And then, we are giving an example of cold stores. So those are kind of things, approaches. I would like to, the way I would like to categorize those post-harvest management technologies. So we've seen biological, AATF has done that. We've been working with partners in addressing aflatoxin. Aflatoxin is caused by a fungus, Aspergillus flavus, that can lead to food poisoning. And it's common in maize and groundnut. And by finding another strain that is quite very aggressive, but is toxigenic, you are able to suppress that particular toxic strain of Aspergillus flavus. All right, chemical, you have fungicides. There are all kinds of chemicals you use to control pests, even including insects. All right, and that is possible. Mechanical, by processing and carefully harvesting your materials so that they don't suffer injuries is another approach. You also need to look at moisture content with the moisture meter and so on. So new technologies are coming out, not necessarily very expensive. Some are not expensive, but they are not permeating very well into the rural sector where smallholder farmers are in Africa. So the issue there is that while many technologies are coming out, okay, yeah.
3 minutes remaining.
Yeah, right. So while many technologies are coming out, you understand, genetics is offering a lot of solutions towards addressing that. And I feel that it's quite cheaper because it's in the seed, it's in the produce qualities. And if you do that, it may perhaps reduce the cost associated with post-harvest management. We have post-harvest diseases like fungus, and we can develop resistance for such diseases. You might just be able to do that. There are also resistance to wounding. You can do that genetically through breeding, and that will help you reduce also exposure to quick deterioration. Then insect resistant plants are there. Then you have mentioned about controlling ethylene synthesis. You know, understand, because by manipulating the ethylene synthesis, you will be able to, you can extend the shelf life of your products. So the genetics approach does address both intrinsic and extrinsic factors very well, because they are well targeted. I don't have time to go more. So in terms of the prospects of adopting those technologies I mentioned, like I mentioned already, the technologies that are not so expensive, I also mentioned the issue of genetics. That may not just be all. You have to, in addition to those technologies, create an environment that will fast track the easy dissemination of those technologies to those who will use them. So you must do some much more beyond the technologies to get farmers to take them up. So one of the things will be selling technologies at discounted prices for farmers to try at home and see the value in purchasing. The other one is to do a lot of demonstration trials, because farmers can easily relate. Users can easily relate to what they have seen works very well. Then you use farmer testimonials to encourage other farmers to adopt technologies by letting farmers speak to the success stories of the application of such technology. You also need to educate smallholder farmers on, in terms of the capacity and efficiencies of the technology, and then facilitate and develop low-cost technologies. I told you before, there are some are expensive, depending on what scale you are in commercialization, that will determine. So the good opportunity is that you can drive market demand. When you get import materials, you are not allowed into the market, into the trade, and then you sell your materials at best prices. Another thing is that a lot of this produce you do can be sustainable, can be sustainable materials for local needs. For example, industries don't want to depend on produce that are not really available for their use if they're in the industrial sector. So that by making sure that you reduce those processes, you produce copious quantity, and they're there. Smallholder participation in value chain is further enhanced, and then you effectively address heavy loss in coming up from your produce, coming out from production, and then you also stimulate public-private investments in agriculture, because they see that things can be more predicted, and when things are predictable, it becomes easier. AATF has done a lot in terms of trying to. It's doing a lot in terms of stemming post-harvest losses. We went into mechanization, where we deliberately quickly facilitate link with processors, and we use trailers to move materials quickly, and also ensure that products don't suffer injuries on the field. We also train farmers around agro-processing to add value addition as well, and as I mentioned before, market linkages. And we're also doing a lot, much more. And then recently, we've mounted machines that can work on at least 4 root and tuber crops, because they suffer a lot of physiological deterioration. So in conclusion, I would say that based on what we have mentioned earlier, 5% is not enough. So we need more investments in post-harvest management to transform food systems in alignment with the challenges in South Africa. We need to integrate post-harvest management systems. One approach may not just be enough, because as I mentioned before, temperatures, things like moisture, all of them can really mess up. So you need to combine suites of post-harvest management technologies. You also need to strengthen the transfer of those technologies, because having technology does not mean it's accessible. And then promote strong emphasis for the highly susceptible value chains like vegetables, fruits, root and tubers, where we suffer a loss. And they can really contribute a lot to nutrition, especially vegetable nutrition. And it's all about stimulating economic growth and development. Thank you very much, moderator, for allowing me time to finish my presentation. And thanks to these 4 people who have contributed in preparing my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I think this presentation was very informative. When you look at the loss, post-harvest loss, it is enormous. So we spend all the energy on the field, we produce, and then we lose 30 to 50% of what we produce because of poor post-harvest technologies and infrastructure. That is very much alarming. Second, Emmanuel shared with us different constraints that we have and different levels of post-harvest challenges. microbial attack, lost on the value chain, and then food wastage itself on our tables. I think we have many levels where we lose, we waste food, and therefore take ourselves back in our effort to reach food security. And we need to improve storage materials, equipment, etc. We need to improve technologies. And I want to thank you very much for also sharing with us some of the ways we can use to reach those. Genetics, for example, to develop varieties which will have a resistance to those different pests and microbes which can lead to very high wastes. I think it was very informative. I will again remind participants that you can post your questions in the chat box. Let me take now the pleasure to invite one of us who is very much on the field doing things to share with us the lessons that we have from the field in this effort to brave different challenges in post-harvest management. And I want to invite Mrs. Opelwa Fayomi. Madam, the floor is yours. You are welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Canisius. It's wonderful to be here. Okay. So I will be talking briefly on some of the post-harvest management challenges, the first-hand lessons from the field. In Nigeria here, we have a lot of projects, even internationally funded projects from DFID, USAID, GIZ that have handled, that are sought to handle issues that have to do with farmers, smallholder farmers, productivity, yield, and the likes. And even some projects that I've talked about post-harvest good handling practice, post-harvest management. But you know that there is never enough to be done in this area. So I'm going to be sharing some brief stories. Dr. Emmanuel has said some things about that I would have talked about, so I wouldn't delve too much on that. But instead, I'll be giving you practical illustrations from what is happening on the field here, using some locations in Nigeria as an example. I first of all want to share the stories of youths from the Kokami tomato market in Katsina State. Katsina State is one of the states in Nigeria where vegetable production is very optimal. And, you know, you'd go there sometimes in the dry season and what you see is amazing. You see vegetables in the fields, you know, all around you. And one of the very peculiar stories of these youths in this market is when farmers bring their tomatoes to the market, you find out that they specialize in drying of tomatoes, slicing the tomatoes from the raffia baskets and then drying them on the bare floor. Some practical example with some of these farmers, you will hear them say they're able to dry as much as 20 to 30 baskets a day, earning between $0.3 to $0.5 per basket. So we all know that, you know, the health implication of some of these open drying methods, but this has become a job. This has become a thing for farmers in this area and even these youths. The other illustration I would like to share is the use of neem leaves as preservative. We got in contact with some farmers in Soba local government who engage more in maize production. And, you know, after several issues of pest infestation on their grains, and some of them really do not want to use some of these non-friendly pesticide for storage of their crops. We find out that some of them developed the method to start using neem leaves. So after they harvest their grains and they put in bags, they put the neem leaves all around the bags, on the floor, in between all the bags. And according to them, it was discovered that for a period of 3 to 6 months, there was no any pest infestation on their crops. This has not been tested as something that can, that is a long-term solution, but it's obviously working for some. Also, one thing that we've seen, at least I've seen practically from experience, is weather pattern on rainfall. Even despite some of the information that is available to these farmers, trainings that some of them have been exposed to, you find out that many farmers, when they harvest their field, they still believe in the buka method of gathering their maize together, and tying together before they remove from the cobs from the stems of the maize. And in 2019, we discovered, because of the rainfall pattern that we had in Nigeria, after most people had harvested their maize, and it was in buka, rain kept falling, and these farmers, the maize started accumulating moisture and termites and other pests. So you see that even a farmer that has done well to use all the agricultural inputs, that are good and of good quality, at that point of harvesting, the weather is not favorable for him. And many of these farmers, in fact, there was a farmer who had 180 bags, about 185 bags of maize. And because of that singular incident of rainfall pattern, by the time he was going to open the buka and remove the cobs from the stems, about 70% of his maize had gone bad. So this leads me to the next point I want to talk about. That's selected tool for post-harvest management. Dr. Emmanuel said something about threshers, and which is one of the things that is a pain point for me. I mean, with my experience on the field, that the threshers that are mostly available to farmers at the point of harvest are not too suitable for what they intend to use for. So you find out that some of these threshers are just mass produced, and not many farmers or not many people are skilled to know how to tune them. So you find out that when they're harvesting, when they put the maize cob in the threshers, many of the maize seed is flying out. Some of them get broken, and at the end of the day, the farmer is not able to meet the required quality of maize that is intended. So I think there is a lot of emphasis on the tools, that are being used in harvesting, in post-harvest management. The last practical experience I would like to share here is the de-hulling of maize as a preservation technique. For those in the poultry sector, we know that, especially for subsistence farming, many farmers use dusa, what we call dusa, here in Nigeria. It's the hulled part of the maize seed as a substitute for feed for their poultry. But practically, people eat these things. So a farmer thinks that he has already made about a few bags of maize for his family to use or to sell in the market close to him. But because he doesn't want to use any harmful pesticides, he resorts to de-hulling the maize, so that even though the end product, which is the dusa, has another benefit, but all the good nutrients of the maize has actually been ripped off, and the farmer resorts to eating the old maize because that's the best bet he has to not having any pest infestation. Last thing I want to say before I move on is my own practical example of what I do in my house. And this is becoming a growing knowledge in Nigeria and even some other West African countries here. Tomato, for example, is mostly affordable are mostly, the prices are lower between the months of December and February. And what many people do, including myself, is to buy the tomato and pepper and everything and grind it. And as if I want to make stew. So I boil it and I put it in bottles and heat it on in a boiling water. And practically, I'm telling you that I have these tomatoes sometimes to use for as long as 18 months after preservation. These are things that I'm doing for my personal household, and a lot of people are doing there. But when you talk about the adaptability and scalability for commercial purposes, it's not been experimentally tested. So maybe Dr. Emmanuel will provide some grant seed funding for us to expand that. Some of the post-harvest management strategies and technologies currently accessible to the typical farmer. When we talk about post-harvest management strategies, we won't be doing justice to it if we do not consider it from the planting, from the planting operations as a whole. So there is the planting activities where quality seeds are needed, to guarantee high shelf life. So because sometimes post-harvest management begins even from pre-planting operations. What are the kind of seeds that the farmers are using? If you're not using a quality seed that has a longer shelf life, loss, because we have found out that there are some vegetables that give you higher shelf life and some that give you that are very poor. If we take tomato as an illustration, you see that depending on the kind of farming technique, either greenhouse farming or open field farming that is being used, the seed quality.
We lost you. I will request you to remove the video. Probably it will improve the quality of reception. Mrs. Opeolua, we are not getting you. Sorry, participant, for this seat. Let's give her 30 seconds and see if she will again be online. I can see that she is back. We lost you.
Okay, yes, I'm back.
Please come back.
I'm back, sorry about that. So another thing is the adherence to good agronomic practice. It is true that a lot of, I'm grateful because I know that a lot of sensitization and trainings are being made available to farmers now on good agronomic practices. And even for farmers that receive inputs, in-kind inputs from anchors and agro dealers and aggregators, there is even the addition of some products like Aflasave that helps reduce aflatoxin and other things. So there is actually a growing knowledge of some of the importance of the inputs that are used during farming and how it affects the harvests and the quality of produce. The second to the last thing here is the pre-harvest activities, making proper harvest measures, logistics, and storage measures, putting them into place. I talked about the availability of implements, tools that are used for harvesting. So if we look around from subsistence farming to pre-commercial and commercial farming, you see that there are a lot of tools. Not every farmer can afford some of these harvesting tools. So the things like community treasures that are made available there should be, since we don't have like a regulator or like a regulating body for the quality of these tools that are being produced. And sometimes you just find anybody just come up and produce fabricated threshers for farmers to use. I think that there should be, if there can be more sensitization, on and more strict measures to make sure that the tools that are being produced for using for harvest is suitable for the harvesting technique. I would share briefly. Okay, I will share briefly. Okay, I will share briefly some currently. Thank you, Doctor. I will share briefly some currently adopted strategies that are being used. This is
we are not getting your presentation. Can you upload it, or Joanne, you can help? We are not having the presentation.
Oh, okay.
Okay, very good.
Okay, sorry about that. So okay, so I'll share briefly some of the currently adopted strategies. This is a picture of a solar dehydrator used for onions in northern Nigeria. It is a solution provided by the Matan Arewa Society initiative. So you see, this is a very, very straight to the point solution that is being used. And this can be mass produced and readily available for as many farmers as possible. This is used in drying of fresh produce, vegetables. It can be used for leafy vegetables, for onions, even for tomato. And this is another example from Sinka Foods in Zaria. This is a solar energy dehydrator that uses electric heat. So you can see pictures of this tomato that have been sliced here. This is the full picture of the dehydrator. And but this particular dehydrator can do about 100 kg per day, 100 kg of tomato per day. And if we're talking about commercially viable products, you agree with me that this is not so commercially viable, because 100 kg of tomato per day is very small for a commercial farmer that is doing about 10 or 15 hectares of farming. Gaps and challenges: quick access to offtake markets, efficient logistic solutions. There has to be a lot of emphasis and power being drawn to the cost of the post-harvest management solutions that are available, especially the solar innovations. Some farmers are aware of this, but can they afford it? Is it accessible? So accessibility and affordability are two things that I would want to emphasize here for the solutions that should be looked into. Availability of manufacturers of these materials in Africa is low, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, and the monopoly that is in the market leads to high cost of these materials. So maybe more companies should be empowered and sensitized to come into this industry, so that cheaper alternatives can be made, and development for R&D can, will be richer, so that the alternatives will be readily available. Some other technologies that are currently being used is, okay, so let me go to the opportunities for women and youth. Available opportunities, there is the Matan Arewa Society initiative that I mentioned, and recent funding opportunities like the Sway Ag Finance that is available for women and youth in agriculture. So I think that some of these initiatives can be further strengthened so that more women and youths can have opportunity in this sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam. I think, again, this one was also very informative. It is not theory. She's talking of what she does and what is done by her colleagues who have invested in the farming. But there are many issues, despite all these practical examples that she shared. There are issues of the scale, issues of the technologies that they have and how they adapt to the conditions in which they work, but also there is a very acute issue of accessibility and affordability of the right technology, the right modern technology that they need by the farmers themselves. So here we have very practical examples, and we commend a lot Madam Opelua and colleagues who have invested in the farming industry for all the efforts done. And yes, discussions how we improve this accessibility and this affordability of the right technologies that would ensure that we really reduce or eliminate those. Let me invite my colleagues to give us the first poll questions. Participants, are you seeing? You have 1 minute to answer this question. At what stage of farming activities do you put measures in place to minimize post-harvest losses? Is it before planting? Is it after planting? Is it during harvest? Or is it after harvest? Please click and send. Thank you. Very good. So 70% say it is before planting. 20% say it is during harvest. 10% say it is after harvest. And 9 have said that it is after planting. So that is the answer. And thank you very much for taking the 1 minute which was given for that exercise. Let me now invite the third presenter. I want to invite Dr. Gabriel Rugalema, and we thank you first of all for having been able to take this time and being with us. Dr. Rugalema, please share with us the experience of the private sector in this area of post-harvest management and how they access technologies to help them overcome the challenges in this very delicate area of vegetable and fruit management, as we have seen from the first presentation from Emmanuel, that this is the most critical area where post-harvesting losses are very high. Daktari, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Canisius, and your team. You have kept us on our toes. You have given us good instruction, and I'm really enjoying the discussion in here. And I would like to commend my colleagues who have gone before me, Dr. Emmanuel Okogbenin and Mrs. Opelwa Fayom, for what they have presented. I work for the World Vegetable Center, and so I will say more about vegetables, fruits, herbs, and spices, and flowers. My presentation is already loaded up here. Is everybody seeing it, or should I increase the size? Where is it? New share. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, the presentation
you are
there,
there.
please put in
Okay,
presentation mode and go ahead.
Okay, let me proceed. Yeah, I will briefly, I think, not really repeat what those who have presented before me have said, but I would want to emphasize the cost of post-harvest losses, particularly in Africa, because I think it's something really we need to take to the highest political and investment agenda in Africa. The post-harvest loss is a technical problem, is a policy problem, is an economic problem, is a social and environmental problem. Yet I think very little is being done. And I wonder why businessmen are not really coming in and making money out of it. So my discussion will revolve around those issues. This is the history of World Vegetable Center, for which I won't say anything. Anyone can find the information on the website. This is on post-harvest loss in Africa, and where I state that Africa, more than any other continent, suffers more post-harvest losses, that the horticultural crops that I deal with on a day-to-day basis are the most delicate and vulnerable to post-harvest deterioration. And the main causes really, I think have been articulated well by those who talked before me. I can show you the graphic I put here, post-harvest. Post-harvest losses really emanates right from the post-harvest stage of crop.
Daktari, can you please put in presentation mode?
Presentation mode, how do I do that? There must be some...
On the bottom at the right, you have that...
bottom
you go to
right?
The bottom.
Yes, after the open book icon, you can see the presentation. Yes, to the right of the open book icon.
Spelling errors, task view.
Next.
Okay,
right
here.
Next.
This one.
That one.
That's it.
That one.
Very good.
So some of us born before computer, we used the real slides. Yeah. Good. So you see there, and these issues have really been raised, the issues of packaging, transportation, selling point, processing facilities and stuff like that. But let me show you some of the photographs of how our materials are transported. You see on the left there, somebody selling tomatoes. And this I can say is a more decent selling because I have seen materials being sold by the roadside. This in the middle, you see somebody transporting flowers to an urban market. By the time they reach there, they will all be wilted. And the third lorry truck there is transporting, you know what? Mangoes from Dodoma in Tanzania to Dar es Salaam market. I think it's about 600 kilometers. But you can imagine how many mangoes will reach the market while still in good order. So the costs of post-harvest losses, I looked at, of course, you lose your marketable product, it's wastage of resources. Why should you plant and care for something that is going to spoil before you sell it? But loss of motivation to farmers too. I mean, if it's perennial, you really get discouraged and probably you exit the value chain. It creates or leads or reinforces food insecurity we have in Africa and increased food imports. And this is what I will spend a bit more of my time. Look at the top 10 most imported foods in sub-Saharan Africa from 2016 to 2019. This continent, number one, imports fruits and vegetables. Why? Because most of our fruits and vegetables are actually spoiled before they reach the market. We import vegetable oils and animal fats. Probably I shouldn't say anything much there, but look also cereals, to pests, to other sorts of disease, and the animal byproducts. If you slaughter meat in Nigeria, you can't bring it to Tanzania because it will rot midway, but apparently you can import it from China or some places. Dairy products, and so on and so forth. So I really at the cost of what all this is costing us as a country, it is in billions of dollars, probably money enough to build a new standard gauge railway from West Africa to East Africa without borrowing money from anyone. Then I asked myself the question that you assigned me, Dr. Canisius, on what would push a private sector entrepreneur to invest in this business if there is money to be made. I think, first of all, the businessmen or business people will look at the opportunity to increase bottom line. Is the post-harvest management technology profitable? Second, they will look at opportunity to increase business competitiveness, including volumes. And I think there is a case here that if all vegetables and fruits that get rotten could be processed or even protected from rotting, somebody can make more money. And then they will be looking for new market opportunities, as well as opportunity to lower cost of production, but also the labor that they are doing more sustainable businesses because they are doing a social justice by reducing post-harvest losses. So I think the business case for investment by businessmen is there, and that investing in post-harvest loss reduction would actually make a business not only make money, but seem to be contributing to sustainable development agenda. But why then businessmen are not doing it? I think, first of all, we who are working in this area, we haven't built or demonstrated or advocated a strong business case for reducing or eliminating post. So I would have expected that in a seminar like this, there are businessmen and banks and big business women who are actually excited to invest in post-harvest losses. But second, we need to promote a strategic partnership between the private sector and public sector on post-harvest management. And this shouldn't really happen at district level alone, at national level and at regional level, ECOWAS, EAC, and others. And the third, and this is what Dr. Okun-Benin talked about, is building partnership with the researchers and research institutions to develop affordable yet good quality technologies and equipment. Because what I see in our continent, post-harvest technologies right now are often at trial or prototype scale, very, very minute scale, in this village, in that community, but they don't reach everybody. So how do we make them reach everybody? How do we bring the businessman in the center to collect all those tomatoes being produced in Katsina, wash them, grade them, package them, and send them to the market in Lagos? So these facilities and institutions, as Africa, we are still lacking. So here I tried to dance around with some of the technologies. My colleagues have spoken in details about the nature of these technologies, but you can see we have simple technologies like sun drying, branching, salting, smoking, to intermediate one at the SME level, small and medium enterprises. They can do oven drying, they can do cottage level processing. Cold chain transport, particularly for vegetables and fruit, is a must. They can do blending, they can do all sorts of things. And then, of course, advanced post-harvest reduction technologies at industrial level, where you could have big warehousing, doing drying, doing chilling, and stuff like that. In Africa, most of the African countries lack cold chain warehouses for fish, for vegetables, for meat. I have seen some countries are building some, including here in Tanzania, but we have, I think, a few at the port and a few at the airport. Products are produced at village level, you see. And then to emphasize the pre-harvest losses, I have put there pest traps. I should have also talked about disease management. So if I look ahead, I see the areas of investment in terms of post-harvest technologies, including technologies for use in crop protection, harvesting technology.
You have 3 minutes, please.
Yeah. So production of good quality materials, state-of-the-art transportation equipment, infrastructure to produce for cold storage and processing of plant factories. So I end up with this pack house that we are doing in Cambodia, as well as vegetable center, where farmers, particularly youth and women farmers, bring their vegetables to this aggregation center, and the vegetables are cooled, they are graded, they are packaged, and they are put on tuk-tuk boat or bodas or okadas, and it's further transported for the market. And it has contributed to nearly 90% reduction in post-harvest losses. So just to say bye, I think what we need is political will. What we need is for the investors to take these issues seriously. What we need is good data from researchers to convince both the politicians and the investors that there is business to be made in this one, but also to focus on partnerships across countries through the African continental free trade area and other platforms to ensure that we eliminate post-harvest losses. This continent cannot afford post-harvest losses and should not have post-harvest losses. We need all the food to produce for food security, for our nutrition, and for our business. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rugarema. This presentation is very, very much informative. It shows us again that package is a serious problem. It shows us that loss of products and wastage of resources, and also loss of motivation, is one of the reasons why we don't sustain and have a growth of productivity and production, because there is a peak and then you go down, and the guy is motivated. Is demotivated because he has lost almost all his produces, and the following season he or she does not put the same effort, and then he produces less, and the cycle goes on. And so we need to find a solution if we are to sustain the growth of production in the area of vegetable, but also all the commodities that we need. That is a very critical issue. And then investment in post-harvesting should be increased so that we can have increased return out of it and contribute to the sustainable development agenda that we have in Africa, as also we contribute to it at a global level. Otherwise, what we commit will not be a reality because the means to reach there is not taken care of. We need a contribution of all. We need the private sector to come in. We need the policymakers to be well informed and convinced that there is something they need to do with post-harvest management. We need also to work with researchers and scientists so that they can bring evidence which is very convincing for those different categories of stakeholders. I will go on and say we need also to bring this message to our farmers so that they know these technologies are there and this is what we can gain if we use it. So I think it is a very, very informative presentation, which also call upon every one of us to do something about all those issues, which would then unlock the potential that we have as a continent and bring the continent to be at least, if not immediately self-sufficient, but I believe Africa can, but at least reduce the importation through reducing drastically the losses that we have in the post-harvesting management. I thank you very much, Dr. Galema. Let me now call upon the last but not least panelists, Dr. Komla Bisi, who will highlight why creating the enabling environment for efficient post-harvest management is critical to facilitating trade at the continental level, and especially to harness the benefit that we can have from this African continental trade area that has been committed to by our head of states. Dr. Bisi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, everybody and colleagues. Good afternoon once again to colleagues back in the Eastern African region. Komla Bisi is my name. I'm speaking today from the AFCFTA Secretariat, but I work originally for the African Union Commission based in Addis Ababa. I'm currently in the Secretariat supporting the work of the Secretariat, looking at the agricultural perspectives of the AFCFTA. For the purpose of today's discussion, a lot has been said already with respect to practical things that are happening on the ground. The challenges, I've seen a lot of challenges highlighted, some proposals with respect to solutions and practical implementations, actions on the ground. Very elaborate presentations, colleagues. Let me rather, therefore, perhaps highlight on the area that I'm supposed to highlight on the policy issues and how all this build onto the AFCFTA arrangements. I must mention that food loss and waste related issues, for that matter, for us, our concern is post-harvest loss related constraints. It's a global issue. This is not a concern of Africa alone. It's a global concern. As we speak, we are aware that about 1.3 billion metric tons of food is lost every year. And this is equivalent to about 30% of all food that is produced for human consumption. With respect to post-harvest losses and in Africa, we also are aware that an estimated 100 million metric tons of food that is produced is lost through post-harvest losses. And this is estimated about some $4 billion that we lose as a continent every year with respect to post-harvest losses. And also we are aware that this quantitative food loss is sufficient to meet the food requirement of about 48 million people every year. Once again, we are also reminded that the value of food losses within the continent also exceed the total value of grains that we import every year. Therefore, we cannot continue to discuss issues about food security, increasing trade, increasing intra-Africa trade, if the value of losses we having, exceeds the total value that we are importing. We have to make conscious efforts to reduce post-harvest losses along and across the value chains. It is in this context that the African Union head of state, when we met in Malabo in 2014, our head of state, with the aim of one, achieving the continent's food security commitments by ending hunger on the continent by the year 2025, and as well as enhancing trade, where our government committed to tripling intra-Africa trade in agricultural commodities and services to ensure that agricultural produce are able to move from places of surplus and places of production to places of need by enhancing intra-Africa trade. Our government committed to triple the volume of intra-Africa trade, as well as work to reduce the amount of food that we lose every year by half, taking 2015 as a benchmark by the year 2025. And this is the commitment that the African Union Commission and its organs, including the AFCFTA Secretariat, is committed to work with member states and partner with all institutions such as the AATF to advance their implementation. Therefore, the discussion today is in context with meeting one, the African Union commitment on ending hunger and reducing post-harvest losses on the continent by half by 2025, as well as enhancing intra-Africa trade in agricultural commodities and services. You also recall that these commitments are highly linked to the SDGs. Colleagues have already mentioned that SDG 2023 commit us all globally to reduce the volume of food losses. Therefore, what the African Union Commission has been doing in this context over the years is to help governments to develop country-specific strategies within their national agriculture and food security investment plans, which I believe most of us are aware of, to have specific interventions that will help reduce post-harvest losses and also enhance trade. There is that global commitment at head of state level, and every country commits to that process. As we speak, we undertake a review of the agriculture implementation priorities at country level, through which we report to our member states in the biannual review process, which is a biannual review report we prepare to our member states, where we are able to monitor and report on the various commitments that we have made. And post-harvest loss reduction is one of the indicators that we evaluate countries on, and we report every 2 years on that. That process is currently going on, and this report, the third of its kind, will be available in January 2022, when we'll be presenting this report to the member states. So all I'm saying is that there is a political will, political commitment to reducing post-harvest losses and enhancing trade with the aim of achieving global food security on the continent. But practically, what we have done at a continental level again is to develop what we call the Africa Continental Post-Harvest Loss Reduction Strategy. This strategy was launched 2 years ago. And to help, first of all, regional economic communities to develop their own regional post-harvest loss strategies, and then trickle down to supporting individual countries to develop their own country-specific post-harvest loss reduction strategies. As we speak, IGAD has already launched their regional post-harvest loss reduction strategy. This was done some 2-3 weeks ago. I can also confirm that Kenya, Tanzania, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Zimbabwe have also developed their country-specific post-harvest loss reduction strategies. Zambia, Tanzania, Kenya, Zimbabwe's post-harvest loss strategy are very broad and comprehensive in nature, whilst Ethiopia's strategy is more specific to grains. And these strategies, one, have 6 specific intervention areas identified broadly and specifically. Broadly, they intend to help develop robust national post-harvest policies that will guide post-harvest loss reduction and related interventions in their respective countries. Secondly, they also intend to enhance technology development, technology advancement with respect to post-harvest loss reduction. In this regard, as a continental body, we have been working to explore the needed partnerships with respect to technology availability and how we can leverage that to impact on national efforts. A lot of discussions have been going on currently, and MOUs are being signed between the African Union Commission and, for example, the government of the People's Republic of China to be able to leverage technology transfer related initiatives between China and Africa and our member states globally, so that we can be able to enhance, our technological need for post-harvest loss reduction. As mentioned earlier, the policy-related issues also link onto the provided the needed enabling environment, pushing government to provide the needed public goods that will be able to leverage private sector investment within the area. And all these discussions are going on at various levels, at continental level, and also trickling on to country-specific interventions. The third area is to improve institutional systemic capacities for institutions tasked with post-harvest law related interventions to be able to function. I have seen a lot of colleagues from various institutions playing their role, the academia, etc. Everybody is playing their role in there, but there is scope to enhance these capacities. We also prioritize knowledge management, knowledge generation, and knowledge sharing in that context, and also prioritizing required incentives that will allow institutions, people, private sector, smallholders, agro-processors have sufficient incentive and financing to be able to undertake interventions within the value chains that help reduce post-harvest losses. And for that matter, we must ensure that policies that are being made at country level, at regional level, and continental policy directives have to point towards all these intervention areas that I mentioned. Another area we are specifically looking at, and this actually relates to the work here at the AFCFTA Secretariat, is to encourage value chain approach to addressing issues of trade, agro-industrialization on the continent, that also impact on agribusiness and post-harvest loss reduction. I'll give you a practical example. It has become evident that to move products, not only agriculture, but commodities generally, between Nigeria, Lagos, and Abidjan in Ivory Coast, takes currently about 12 days. And one can imagine what happens to food products in this context, not even talking about the impact of the lockdowns and measures that were imposed on us due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This was the original normal. And taking the COVID-19 pandemic and related lockdowns into consideration, you can imagine what happens on our corridors. One of our colleagues earlier spoke from Nigeria. I'm sure you are aware of the border constraints, etc. Therefore, what the secretariat here at the AFCFTA is focusing on is to work with our member states as one of the key areas.
You have 3 minutes to conclude, Dr. Bisi.
Thank you, sir. To work with our member states to be able to develop appropriate technologies that will enhance or fast track border procedures to enhance intra-Africa trade, and also to reduce the amount of time that agricultural produce or products take along our borders to be able to move faster and be able to impact on intra-African trade. Therefore, in summary, in moving forward, our effort is to help to develop national strategies, to help countries to develop country-specific strategies to reduce post-harvest loss reduction along the thematic areas that I mentioned, including policies and enabling environments. We need to also create the needed national public-private partnerships. In that respect, we need to work along the regional value chains or strengthen value chains in that respect, and also explore all options to scale up financing and incentives for investment within the value chains. With these few remarks, I would like to thank the organizers for this important dialogue. I must mention also that the African Union Commission is leading the All Africa Post-Harvest Congress and Exhibition that is going on this week. And therefore, this discussion could equally fit into that broader discussion on the continent. And thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bisi. Another very informative presentation, which brings us actually to very important areas. The first one is actually what we are discussing. Our leaders know about it, and they are committed to contributing and guiding on how things can change. So there is quite an amount of commitment in the political sphere. But what we need is to accelerate actions on the ground. And that will go along with enhancing post-harvest management related technologies and partnership, which are needed, and some effort have started with some advanced countries like China, but even inside our continent, there should be synergies, but also partnership between different components of the value chain or different commodities. Our researchers are called to generate knowledge. We are called to manage that knowledge and share it with our stakeholders so that it can be used to bring the solutions. And an example, most of you have already met in your life, is the time commodities take from one place to another in the same continent. From Lagos to almost, I would say, the neighboring Abidjan, if you can take 12 days, it means there is a lot of bureaucracy that need to be broken. And here you are talking of two countries in the same regional economic communities. We are challenged in different ways, and we need, as African, to find sustainable solutions. Let me call upon my colleagues to bring in the second poll question as we prepare to answer the questions by our panelists. Yes, answer the question by our panelists, questions asked by different participants. The poll, please. We take 1 minute and then we go.
Seeing a slight issue, I think we proceed. I will upload it later.
That is very good. Then we go. The first question was asked by Paul Mutambo to Emmanuel. Farm machinery is a cause of damage to produce, contributing to post-harvesting loss, given that we also need to promote agricultural mechanization as a way of boosting efficiency and productivity. How can we strike the balance of enhancing mechanization without causing more post-harvest loss? Dr. Emmanuel.
Yeah, so, well, your machinery can be helpful and can also cause damage. The balance will come from using an appropriate machine. For example, if you look at cassava are pulled manually, and by so doing, you break the roots. And when you break the roots, physiological deterioration sets in, and that's not helpful. So the problem is not the machinery, it's when you use the wrong machinery. That's what I would tell you. If you're not using the appropriate machinery, then it's wrong. But if you're using the appropriate one, then you don't have much problem. For example, AATF brought into Nigeria harvesters, and those harvesters can help you pick up your cassava roots with less damage. You may also have heard of machine learning. Machine learning comes with developing tools that can help you carry out operations efficiently. And in a large farm, you see machines, plucking fruits, harvesting your fruits without much damage. So that's what you need. Now, if your machine is going to make you lose money, then you shouldn't apply that. Otherwise, you will have a lot of post-harvest losses. And injury does quickly stimulate deterioration in some situations. So it's just what you're using. And if it's not appropriate, then it's not right. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appropriate machine. I think what we need to do is to spread widely those successful examples. Like, for example, what AgriDrive and AATF are doing in Nigeria, where you have harvesters, which are indeed appropriate. I think that will be part of the knowledge that we need to bring to you as part of learning from peer. Let me bring the second question, and it is for Mrs. Opeolua. As we aim at empowering women and youth for better post-harvest loss management, to what extent have group aggregation approaches succeeded, and what can be done better? Madam?
Thank you very much. When it comes to post-harvest management and the role of women, I think that from what we've seen on the field, I would say to a very large extent that group aggregation techniques have actually been very, very successful because when you do things together, obviously there is these are traditional methods. So the more the merrier, I would say. When you have more people working together, is faster. And there are cases where you see that people come together to put funds together to lease equipment. So something that one person cannot do alone, or just very few people, when they are more, they are able to afford these equipment and even have it for a longer time. So I would say it has been effective, and it is actually effective and should be encouraged further. How can it be better? I think that the availability of improved equipment, improved tools for them, availability, and I would say again, affordability. So if there is a way that these things can be subsidized, I think I talked about the technique that is used more between, where you have an aggregator and an anchor, giving tools, inputs to farmers. So sometimes maybe in the economics of production, if they can't consider leasing, cost sharing some of the cost of these things. So maybe to be an agreement, and this goes back to the implementation of the contract farming policies that are in place. So instead of just providing inputs for the farmers, there should be also subsidized rate of post-harvest tools that will be provided for the clusters of farmers that are being engaged. I think this can work, and it should be encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam. Now, from Phil Glader, a question to Dr. Rugalema. What are some of the appropriate technological improvements that you are excited about for post-harvest processes? Daktari. I think,
I'm unmuting. I think that's a very, very relevant question, and I would say also very, very tricky, in the sense that if you look at the whole issue of post-harvest.
Oh, we lose you. You are frozen.
Hello?
Yes, yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
So some are practices, but I think I would say this: for smallholder farmers who are harvesting vegetables for home use, for example, leafy vegetables, I'm really excited about by solar technology that can dry vegetables and make farm season. Hello?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Yeah, okay. So for me, affordable solar technologies. For root crops, when I was FAO representative in Nigeria, in Sierra Leone, after the war, there was this mobile technology using Okadas, motorcycles, of cassava graters, where young people would move from village to village, grate cassava in a very short time using manual but mobile graters, and enable farmers to dry their cassava as quickly as they can. That, I think, solved the two problems. First, the availability, then the affordability that Mrs. Apelwa talked about, but also the employment for the young people. That technology wasn't, of course, further, and the initiative didn't go further than the project period, but it really helped me understand that with such a technology, you can help farmers, particularly those who grow cassava and those who grow yam, to grate their yam and dry it before it rots away. In the maize sector, I've been impressed with the large-scale technologies I've seen in some of the private sector practitioners in Kenya, those who have got industrial dryers. They harvest their maize, send the maize through the industrial dryer, achieve the needed moisture content, and then they do what? They store the maize for a longer period. Otherwise, there have been some trials here at the World Vegetable Center where we are looking at chilling technologies and others. But as I said, they isolate you.
Good.
Here is it's going to be a challenge or a job of work to be convinced to use these technologies. At household level, farmers harvest little tiny volume for use at household level. Probably they still prefer pounding and higher or greater or kind of processor. So one of the activities we have to do is also to advocate to the farmers that they can save time and money and resources by using these a bit more advanced technologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Rugalema. Now to Dr. Bisi. And I think it very much links with what Dr. Rugalema and Mrs. Opalua have said. The question from participants says, we note that African Union is doing a lot of work to set an enabling environment for post-harvest loss management. Any effort to boost regional infrastructure? Dr. Bisi.
Yes, certainly the African Union commits to supporting effort to, one, enhance rural infrastructure globally. I think as we speak, there is a consultation that is going on to finalize the rural infrastructure framework document. In the context of the PIDA program for infrastructure development in Africa, if you are aware, speaks more to global infrastructure development on the continent. That is even beyond post-harvest loss management. But more specifically to post-harvest losses, what the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, where I work, has been doing currently is to explore options such as, we call it a common agro park initiative, for example, that intends to build regional level infrastructure for agri-sector development. We call the CAP, the Common Africa Agro Park Initiative. I'll be able to send you the conceptual framework of that document. And that document expands beyond just production to processing, value adding, packaging, and marketing of agricultural products. It is similar to the industrial parks of some countries you might have heard of. But this is an industrial park that is specific to agriculture development or agriculture processing, of which post-harvest loss reduction is a critical element of that. Over.
Thank you very much.
Can I add a bit there?
Yes, just a minute or less.
Yes, less. I'm really happy that that question has been asked, because we can talk about so many things that happens on the farm, post-farm, whatever, but in terms of post-harvest management, infrastructure matters. And two infrastructures, the road infrastructure as well as the final market infrastructure. So let me give you an example, a quick example. We did some rough experiments on a distance of 700 kilometers of a paved road from Arusha to Dar es Salaam, with a rough timber crate transporting tomato. Post-harvest loss was 60%. Using smooth timber crate was 40%. Using smooth plastic crate, it was 20%. Same experiment, distance 200 kilometers of rough road, from Kongwa to Arusha. Rough timber crate, post-harvest loss 90%, smooth timber crate 60%, smooth plastic crate 40%. So the improvement of our road infrastructure is really going to be very, very critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor. Let me take this opportunity to thank our panelists. Mrs. Opelwa, thank you very much for sharing the insight of somebody who is on the field, who is getting firsthand challenges and finding ways to address them. Thank you very much, Dr. Rugalema.
Thank you
for your experience in this area of post-harvesting for a very sensitive set of commodities, and working also in private sector. The experiences and the effort done are very commendable. I want to thank also very much Dr. Bisi for sharing the development that we are making at the African Union level. Most of the time, we who are with the farmers down at the ground, we complain and we think that there is no understanding, no commitment from our leadership. But here we are at least assured what we need is to expedite, to accelerate the implementation so that all these issues that are taking place are resolved. It is indeed heartbreaking to hear that from Dar es Salaam to Arusha, one who has spent the whole season cultivating, taking care, can lose up to 90%. It means nothing comes from the effort. Infrastructure is important. Enabling environment in terms of policies and easing all those issues at the borders is crucial. Because we know that if you take fruits or vegetables, you are taking them from Lagos to Abidjan, and they spend 12 days to reach there. All of them are rotten, to say so. So, because the time is too much. So we need to facilitate that. And then if we don't do, we will continue to depend on those who have developed those policies and infrastructure. We will be eating sukuma wiki. This is kale, probably from another continent, because they have developed the means to bring them, and they will charge us what they need while we are seated on a soil which is very fertile, and we have been given by God the condition to produce them. And we have people who could do that, but they need to be assured that when they have done that effort, at least they get something out of it. So I think it is a call for action from all of us to do our effort so that this acceleration of access to the right technologies by our farmers in general, small farmers in particular, because they are the majority of our farmers. And if we change their lives, indeed, we will change the lives and livelihood of many families on this continent. So our effort is to make sure that there is accelerated access to those post-harvesting management technologies for more income, for easy trade across the continent. I thank you very much, panelists, for that. I want to thank very much Emmanuel Okobenin, my colleague, for the presentation he made. It shows that research, managing knowledge generators, and I would add, those communicating the knowledge and those technologies to our farmers, we have a work to do to transfer the technologies to the end users and have them convinced of the return that they can get, and also to continue scouting those technologies so that they can be affordable and accessible to our people, as I will call her, the representative of the farmers have said here. Accessibility and affordability of those technologies are key. I will end by thanking from the bottom of our heart and on behalf of AATF, all the participants who have been with us during, unfortunately, an extended time. We thought we will use only 90 minutes. We ended up using almost 2 hours, and you have been there. We thank you very much for your comment, for your questions. And we thank you also because we believe that you will bring this message in your heart and share it with others. It is by constituting a critical mass of people who realize the challenges that we have and the proposed solutions that experts and practitioners at the ground have proposed here, that we can influence the improvement of policies and also the acceleration of the development of the right infrastructure that we need to continue this work and provide a better environment for our farmers to continue their work and feed the continent. I thank you very much, and I invite you again. I look forward to seeing you, to talking with you in our next webinar in about 2 months from now. Thank you very much. God bless you, and keep safe and healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Canisius.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Wonderful. It was worth the time and the effort.
Thank you.
We believe the future is in the hands of those who walk the fields. For those are the hands that feed nations and ensure a better and more productive Africa. We believe in those hands, and that is why we too bring our hands in support of them. Our hands come bearing technologies and solutions that ensure their effort is not in vain, but deliver results that ensure a sustainable, prosperous, and food-secure Africa. At AATF, we are driving transformation of livelihoods in sub-Saharan Africa through innovative agricultural technologies that deliver results. We promise to deliver prosperity through technology.